All right, fishing family, so last week I was out rummaging in the creek fishing, and I've always got my eye out for any type of Native American artifact that might be in the bed of the creek. What's this? When I found this, I was on cloud nine. I have always wanted to be an archaeologist. I always kind of saw myself as the Tennessee version of Indiana Jones. I imagined myself back here in these Tennessee hollers, rummaging through stuff, walking through the creeks and finding Indian relics like this, and you're like, golly ma, golly ma. Either way, I was on cloud nine. I'm telling you, I was stoked when I found it. But so I thought, what better thing to do than to throw it to you guys to figure out what this was. And quickly, there were two factions that arose really fast. So one faction said that this was a tool that you would use to grind things with. So the Native Americans would have had a mortar, which is like a bowl, and this is called the pestle. And they would have, you know, let's just say Squanto was out, and he was out hunting, and he dropped his beaver skin trousers, and he popped a squat down in the bushes and didn't realize he was in some poison ivy. Later on, he gets home and his undercarriage is all blistered up, and Pocahontas is like, what did you get into? So they're like, we got to go see the medicine doctor. So they would go to the medicine doctor, and he'd get his mortar and pestle out. He would pick different things, herbs, and he would put those in that mortar bowl, and he would squish those up with this pestle and make a salve that then Squanto could rub on his undercarriage and get him all patched up. So then the second faction starts telling me what they think it is. And I was a little embarrassed. I'm going to be honest, I was embarrassed. Let's just say it's a tool that the Native Americans would have made, but it's more of the adult persuasion. I'm trying to keep this family friendly, you know. We've got kids probably watching, and I'm not trying to teach them anything, but this might be a device that, you know, nowadays you might find at one of those stores in the bad part of town. It's got a lot of neon lights on it. It's always open, and there's always cars in the parking lot at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, which leads me to this point, is that Ryan Jumbletron actually left me a comment and said, won't you ask Pocahontas?
You naughty white knight.
And so now I see, that makes sense, because I was always wondering who was in these buildings at 2 and 3 o'clock in the morning, and now I know who one of those vehicles probably belongs to. And if you're not familiar with who Jumbletron is, well, let me show you a little clip of who Jumbletron is.
Many of you bring binoculars, camcorders, even camera phones to take pictures.
He looked like Jumbletron up in a tree to me. All you gotta do is look up in the tree. Who else see Jumbletron say yeah?
This amateur sketch resembles what many of you say the leprechaun looks like.
There you go. I mean, what can you say? So now I see who's parking in those parking lots at 2 o'clock in the morning. It's you, Ryan. I mean, I would never have guessed that, and I was a little nervous to go putting this in the interwebs, and I didn't want it on my search browser, really. You know, they kind of think I'm some weirdo, and then I get flagged or whatever. Either way, the things did exist. I'm totally surprised. Depending on which faction is right, I don't really know, but I will say this. I was always interested in archaeology growing up. I actually wanted to do it as a profession. And still, talking to my guidance counselor, and they were saying, if you don't mind sweating to death, which I don't, and eating pork and beans the whole life, this is the field for you. And I was like, well, I actually want to excel to have a little more than just pork and beans for a regular diet. But I don't even know what this thing is worth. I'm going to have to probably reach out to some, you know, Smithsonian, maybe some, I don't know. I'm going to find the right person. So here I'm feeling, I'm on cloud nine. I'm like, I've got something that I can pass down to my family members that they'll remember. Like Trey, man, he was pretty much like an archaeologist. Look what he found. It was incredible. But there was one eagle eye out there, just one eagle eye. Kept really inspecting this, and that was Greg with Puddle Walkers. And he actually reached out to his buddy that was really knowledgeable in Indian artifacts, and he tends to believe that this might actually be an antique, it's a rod from a battery. These would have been like around the Depression era. They would have been made of, I think, graphite and carbon, but from my understanding, I think there's supposed to be lead inside of them. Now, I've taken a magnet all over this. There is nothing magnetic. There are no holes on either end of this. So I don't really know. What do you guys think? I mean, is it faction A, faction B, or is it the outlier with Mr. Greg? And this actually is not anything too special. It's other than an old battery part from around the Depression era. You know, I will have to say, I mean, here I was getting my hopes up. I mean, it's like you just find this like very brittle clay pot, and you're just like, you're so excited, and you're thinking like, oh my God, I got to get this home, and all of a sudden it's like, somebody just crushes your hopes and dreams because you thought you had, whether it was a pestle or the other thing, and it turns out it's nothing but a piece of trash from a car battery from the Depression era. I don't know. At this point now, I'm really, I don't even know whether to call the Smithsonian, because I probably will be embarrassed at that point if I reach out to them. I don't know. Still, what do you think about it? Check this out. When I saw the tip of that, that's what I knew. Something had been worked around this. It's just too perfect. It is, I mean, it's not super duper heavy. So it's not something like real metallic lead that I would expect to be heavier. Maybe it is graphite. Maybe it's graphite carbon. I don't know. But that's my story on my Indian relic. It still may be. I've got my fingers crossed that it truly is. And I would prefer it to be the pestle, because I sure don't want to pass this down to my grandkids and it be the second option, because I don't want to explain that to them, especially if I pass away and they're young. Nah, I ain't even going there. So, all right, guys. Well, either way, I hope you have enjoyed this Fish Tales from the Creek. All right, let's get back to some fishing. I'm serious, it was this big.